Vronsky followed the guard to the carriage, and at the door of the compartment he stopped short to make room for a lady who was getting out. With the insight of a man of the world, from one glance at this lady's appearance, Vronsky classified her as belonging to the best society. He begged her pardon and was getting into the carriage, but felt he must glance at her once more. Not that she was very beautiful, not on account of the elegance and modest grace which were apparent in her whole figure, but because in the expression of her charming face as she passed close by him, there was something unusually caressing and soft. As he looked round, she too turned her head. Her shining gray eyes that looked dark from thick lashes rested with friendly attention on his face, as though she were recognizing him, and then promptly turned away to the passing crowd, as though seeking someone. In that brief look, Vronsky had time to notice the suppressed eagerness which played over her face, and flitted between the brilliant eyes and the faint smile that curved her red lips. It was as though her nature were so brimming over with something that against her will it showed itself, now in the flash of her eyes, now in her smile. Deliberately she shrouded the light in her eyes, but it shone against her will in the faintly perceptible smile. Vronsky stepped into the carriage. His mother, a dried-up old lady with black eyes and ringlets, screwed up her eyes, scanning her son, and smiled slightly with her thin lips. Getting up from the seat and handing her maid a bag, she gave her little wrinkled hand to her son to kiss, and lifting his head from her hand, kissed him on the cheek. "You got my telegram quite well? Thank God." "You had a good journey?" asked her son, sitting down beside her and involuntarily listening to a woman's voice outside the door. He knew it was the voice of the lady he had met at the door. "All the same, I don't agree with you," said the lady's voice. "It's the Petersburg view, madame." "Not Petersburg, but simply feminine," she responded. "Well, well, allow me to kiss your hand." "Goodbye, Ivan Petrovitch. And could you see if my brother is here, and send him to me?" said the lady in the doorway, and stepped back again into the compartment. "Well, have you found your brother?" said Countess Vronskaya, addressing the lady. Vronsky understood now that this was Madame Karenina. "Your brother is here," he said, standing up. "Excuse me, I did not know you, and indeed our acquaintance was so slight," said Vronsky, bowing, "that no doubt you do not remember me." "Oh, no," said she. "I should have known you because your mother and I have been talking, I think, of nothing but you all the way." As she spoke, she let the eagerness that would insist on coming out show itself in her smile. "And still no sign of my brother." "Do call him, Alexei," said the old countess. Vronsky stepped out into the platform and shouted, "Oblonsky, here!" Madame Karenina, however, did not wait for her brother, but catching sight of him, she stepped out with her light, resolute step, and as soon as her brother had reached her, with a gesture that struck Vronsky by its decision and its grace, she flung her left arm round his neck, drew him rapidly to her, and kissed him warmly. Vronsky gazed, never taking his eyes from her, and smiled. He could not have said why. But recollecting that his mother was waiting for him, he went back again into the carriage. "She's very sweet, isn't she?" said the Countess of Madame Karenina. "Her husband put her with me, and I was delighted to have her. We've been talking all the way. And so you, I hear, have the perfect little love? Good, my boy." "I don't know what you're referring to, maman," he answered coldly. "Come, let's go." Madame Karenina entered the carriage again to say good-bye to the Countess. "Well, Countess, you have met your son, and I my brother," she said, "and all my gossip is exhausted. I should have nothing more to tell you." "Oh, no," said the Countess, taking her hand. I could go all around the world with you and never be bored. You are one of those delightful women in whose company it is sweet to be silent as well as to talk. Now please don't fret over your son. You can't expect never to be parted." Madame Karenina stood quite still, holding herself very erect, and her eyes were smiling. "Anna Arkadyevna," said the Countess in explanation to her son, "has a little son, 8 years old, I believe, and she has never been parted from him before, and she keeps fretting over leaving him." "Yes, the Countess and I have been talking all the time, I of my son and she of hers," said Madame Karenina, and again a smile lighted up her face, a caressing smile which was intended for him. "I am afraid that must have been dreadfully boring," he said, promptly catching the ball of coquetry she had flung at him. But apparently she did not care to pursue the conversation in that strain, and she turned to the old Countess. "Thank you so much. The time has passed so quickly. Goodbye, Countess." "Goodbye, my love," answered the Countess. "Let me have a kiss of your pretty face. I speak plainly at my age, and I tell you simply that I've lost my heart to you." Stereotyped as the phrase was, Madame Karenina obviously believed it, and was delighted by it. She flushed, bent down slightly, and put her cheek to the Countess's lips, drew herself up again, and with the same smile fluttering between her lips and her eyes, she gave her hand to Vronsky. He pressed the little hand she gave him, and was delighted, as though at something special, by the energetic squeeze with which she freely and vigorously shook his hand. She went out with the rapid step which bore her rather fully developed figure with such strange lightness. "Very charming," said the Countess. That was just what her son was thinking. His eyes followed her till her graceful figure was out of sight, and then the smile remained on his face. He saw out of the window how she went up to her brother, put her arm in his, and began telling him something eagerly, obviously something that had nothing to do with him, Vronsky, and at that he felt annoyed. "Well, maman, are you perfectly well?" he repeated, turning to his mother. "Everything has been delightful. Alexander has been very good, and Marie has grown very pretty. She's very interesting." And she began telling him again of what interested her most, the christening of her grandson, for which she had been staying in Petersburg, and the special favor shown her elder son by the Tsar. "Here's Lavrenti," said Vronsky, looking out the window. "Now we can go if you like." The old butler who had traveled with the Countess came to the carriage to announce that everything was ready, and the Countess got up to go. "Come, there's not such a crowd now," said Vronsky. The maid took a handbag and the lapdog. The butler and a porter took the other baggage. Vronsky gave his mother his arm. But just as they were getting out of the carriage, several men ran suddenly by with panic-stricken faces. The station-master, too, ran by in his extraordinary colored cap. Obviously, something unusual had happened. The crowd who had left the train were turning back again. What? Where?" "Flung himself, crushed," was heard among the crowd. Stepan Arkadyevitch, with his sister on his arm, turned back. They too looked scared, and they stopped at the carriage door to avoid the crowd. The ladies got in, while Vronsky and Stepan Arkadyevitch followed the crowd to find out the details of the disaster. A guard, either drunk or too much muffled up in the bitter frost, had not heard the train moving back and had been crushed. Before Vronsky and Oblonsky came back, the ladies heard the facts from the butler. Oblonsky and Vronsky had both seen the mutilated corpse. Oblonsky was evidently upset. He frowned and seemed ready to cry. "Oh, how awful! Oh, Anna, if you had seen it! Oh, how awful!" he said. Vronsky did not speak. His handsome face was serious, but perfectly composed. "Oh, if you had seen it, Countess," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. "And his wife was there. Oh, it was awful to see her. She flung herself on the body. They say he was the only support for an immense family. How awful." "Couldn't one do anything for her?" said Madame Karenina in an agitated whisper. Vronsky glanced at her and immediately got out of the carriage. "I'll be back directly, maman," he remarked, turning round in the doorway. When he came back a few minutes later, Stepan Arkadyevitch was already in conversation with the countess about the new singer, while the countess was impatiently looking towards the door, waiting for her son. "Now let us be off," said Vronsky, coming in. They went out together. Vronsky was in front with his mother. Behind walked Madame Karenina and her brother. Just as they were going out of the station master overtook Vronsky. "You gave my assistant 200 rubles. Would you kindly explain for whose benefit you intend them?" "For the widow," said Vronsky, shrugging his shoulders. "I should have thought there was no need to ask." "You gave that?" cried Oblonsky behind, and pressing his sister's hand, he added, very nice. Isn't he a splendid fellow? Goodbye, Countess." And he and his sister stood still, looking for her maid. When they went out, the Vronsky's carriage had already driven away. People coming in were still talking of what had happened. "What a horrible death," said a gentleman passing by. "They say he was cut in 2 pieces." "On the contrary, I think that's the easiest. It's instantaneous," observed another. "How is it they don't take proper precautions?" said a third. Madame Karenina seated herself in the carriage, and Stepan Arkadyevitch saw with surprise that her lips were quivering, and she was with difficulty restraining tears. "What is it, Anna?" he asked, when they had driven a few hundred yards. "It's an omen of evil," she said. "Oh, nonsense," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. "You've come, that's the chief thing. You can't conceive how I'm resting all my hopes on you." "Have you known Vronsky long?" she asked. "Yes. You know, we're hoping he will marry Kitty." "Yes," said Anna softly. "Come now, let us talk of you," she added, tossing her head, as though she would physically shake off something superfluous oppressing her. "Let us talk of your affairs. I got your letter, and here I am." "Yes, all my hopes are in you," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. "Well, tell me all about it." And Stepan Arkadyevitch began to tell his story. On reaching home, Oblonsky helped his sister out, sighed, pressed her hand, and set off to his office. When Anna went into the room, Dolly was sitting in the little drawing room with a white-headed fat little boy, already like his father, giving him a lesson in French reading. As the boy read, he kept twisting and trying to tear off a button that was already nearly off his jacket. His mother had several times taken his hand from it, but the fat little hand went back to the button again. His mother pulled the button off and put it in her pocket. "Keep your hands still, Grisha," she said, and she took up her work, a coverlet she had long been making. She always set to work on it at depressed moments, and now she knitted at it nervously, twitching her fingers and counting the stitches. Though she had sent word the day before to her husband that it was nothing to her whether his sister came or not, she had made everything ready for her arrival, and was expecting her sister-in-law with emotion. Dolly was crushed by her sorrow, utterly swallowed up by it. Still, she did not forget that Anna, her sister-in-law, was the wife of one of the most important people in Petersburg, and was a Petersburg grande dame. And thanks to this circumstance, she did not carry out her threat to her husband. That is to say, she remembered that her sister-in-law was coming. And after all, Anna is in no way to blame, thought Dolly. I know nothing of her except the very best, and I have seen nothing but kindness and affection from her towards myself. It was true that, as far as she could recall the impressions at Petersburg at the Karenins, she did not like the household itself. There was something artificial in the whole framework of their family life. But why should I not receive her? If only she doesn't take it into her head to console me, thought Dolly. All consolation and counsel and Christian forgiveness, all that I have thought over 1,000 times, and it's no use. All these days Dolly had been alone with her children. She did not want to talk of her sorrow, but with that sorrow in her heart she could not talk of outside matters. She knew that in one way or another she would tell Anna everything, and she was alternately glad at the thought of speaking freely, and angry at the necessity of speaking of her humiliation with her, his sister, and of hearing her ready-made phrases of good advice and comfort. She had been on the lookout for her, glancing at her watch every minute, and, as so often happens, she let slip just that minute when the visitor arrived, so that she did not hear the bell. Catching a sound of skirts and light steps at the door, she looked round, and her careworn face unconsciously expressed not gladness, but wonder. She got up and embraced her sister-in-law. "What? You're here already?" she said as she kissed her. "Dolly, how glad I am to see you." "I am glad too," said Dolly, faintly smiling, and trying by the expression of Anna's face to find out whether she knew. Most likely she knows, she thought, noticing the sympathy in Anna's face. "Well, come along, I'll take you to your room," she went on, trying to defer as long as possible the moment of confidences. "Is this Grisha? Heavens, how he's grown," said Anna, and kissing him, never taking her eyes off Dolly, she stood still and flushed a little. "No, please, let us stay here." She took off her kerchief and her hat, and catching it in a lock of her black hair, which was a mass of curls, she tossed her head and shook her hair down. "You are radiant with health and happiness," said Dolly, almost with envy. "I? Yes," said Anna. "Merciful heavens, Tanya, you're the same age as my Seryozha," she added, addressing the little girl as she ran in. She took her in her arms and kissed her. "Delightful child, delightful. Show me them all." She mentioned them, not only remembering the names, but the years, months, characters, illnesses of all the children, and Dolly could not but appreciate that. "Very well, we'll go to them," she said. "It's a pity Vasya's asleep." After seeing the children, they sat down, alone now, in the drawing-room to coffee. Anna took the tray and then pushed it away from her. "Dolly," she said, "he has told me." Dolly looked coldly at Anna. She was now waiting for phrases of conventional sympathy, but Anna said nothing of the sort. "Dolly, dear," she said, "I don't want to speak for him to you, nor to try to comfort you. That's impossible. But, darling, I'm simply sorry from my heart for you." Under the thick lashes of her shining eyes, tears suddenly glittered. She moved nearer to her sister-in-law and took her hand in her vigorous little hand. Dolly did not shrink away, but her face did not lose its frigid expression. She said, "To comfort me's impossible. Everything's lost after what has happened. Everything's over." Indirectly she had said this, her face suddenly softened. Anna lifted the wasted thin little hand of Dolly, kissed it, and said, "But, Dolly, what's to be done? What's to be done? How is it best to act in this awful position? That's what you must think of." "All's over. There's nothing more," said Dolly. "And the worst of all is, you see, I can't cast him off. There are the children. I am tied, and I can't live with him. It's a torture to me to see him." "Dolly, darling, he has spoken to me, but I want to hear it from you. Tell me about it." Dolly looked at her inquiringly. Sympathy and love unveined were visible on Anna's face. "Very well," she said all at once, "but I will tell you it from the beginning. You know how I was married. With the education Mamma gave us, I was more than innocent. I was stupid. I knew nothing. I know they say men tell their wives of their former lives, but Stiva," she corrected herself, "Stepan Arkadyevitch told me nothing. You'll hardly believe it, but till now I imagined I was the only woman he had known. So I lived 8 years. You must understand that I was so far from suspecting infidelity, I regarded it as impossible. And then, try to imagine, with such ideas, to find out that all the horror, all the loathsomeness, you must try to understand me, to be fully convinced of one's happiness, and all at once," continued Dolly, holding back her sobs, "to get a letter, his letter to his mistress, my governess. No, it's too awful." She hastily pulled out her handkerchief and hid her face in it. "I can understand being carried away by feeling," she went on after a brief silence, "but deliberately, slyly deceiving me, and with whom? To go on being my husband together with her. It's awful. You can't understand." "Oh, yes, I understand. I understand. Dolly, dearest, I do understand," said Anna, pressing her hand. "And do you imagine he realizes all the awfulness of my position?" Dolly resumed. "Not the slightest. He's happy and contented." "Oh, no," Anna interposed quickly. "He's to be pitied. He's weighed down by remorse." "Is he capable of remorse?" Dolly interrupted, gazing intently into her sister-in-law's face. "Yes, I know him. I could not look at him without feeling sorry for him. We both know him. He's good-hearted, but he's proud. And now he's so humiliated. What touched me most," and here Anna guessed what would touch Dolly most, "he's tortured by 2 things. That he's ashamed for the children's sake, and that loving you, yes, loving you beyond everything on earth," she hurriedly interrupted Dolly, who would have answered, "that he has hurt you, pierced you to the heart. No, she can't forgive me, he keeps saying." Dolly looked dreamily away beyond her sister-in-law as she listened to her words. "Yes, I can see his position is awful. It's worse for the guilty than the innocent," she said, "if he feels all the misery comes from his fault. But how am I to forgive him? How am I to be his wife again after her? For me to live with him now would be torture. Just because I love my past love for him." And sobs cut short her words. But as though of set design, each time she was softened, she began to speak again of what exasperated her. "She's young, you see. She's pretty," she went on. "Do you know, Anna, my youth and my beauty are gone. Taken by whom? By him and his children. I have worked for him, and all I had has gone in his service. And now, of course, any fresh, common creature has more charm for him. No doubt they talked of me together, or, worse yet, they were silent. Do you understand?" Again her eyes glowed with hatred. "And after that he will tell me what? Can I believe him? Never. No, everything is over. Everything that once made my comfort, the rewards of my work and my sufferings. Would you believe it? I was teaching Grisha just now. Once this was a joy to me. Now it is a torture. What have I to strive and toil for? Why are the children here? What's so awful is that all at once my heart's turned, and instead of love and tenderness, I have nothing but hatred for him. Yes, hatred. I could kill him. Darling Dolly, I understand, but don't torture yourself. You are so distressed, so overwrought, that you look at many things mistakenly. Dolly grew calmer, and for 2 minutes both were silent. What's to be done? Think for me, Anna. Help me. I have thought over everything, and I see nothing. Anna could think of nothing, but her heart responded instantly to each word, to each change of expression of her sister-in-law. One thing I would say, began Anna. I am his sister. I know his character, that faculty of forgetting everything, she waved her hand before her forehead, that faculty of being completely carried away, but for completely repenting too. He cannot believe it. He cannot comprehend now how he could have acted as he did. No, he understands. He understood, Dolly broke in. But you are forgetting me. Does that make it easier for me? Wait a minute. When he told me, I will own, I did not realize all the awfulness of your position. I saw nothing but him, and that the family was broken up. I felt sorry for him, but after talking to you, I see it as a woman quite differently. I see your agony, and I can't tell you how sorry I am for you. But, Dolly, darling, I fully realize your sufferings, only there is one thing I don't know. I don't know how much love there is still in your heart for him. That you know, whether there is enough for you to be able to forgive him. If there is, forgive him. No, Dolly was beginning, but Anna cut her short, kissing her hands once more. I know more of the world than you do, she said. I know how men like Stiva look at it. You speak of his talking of you with her. That never happened. Such men are unfaithful, but their home and wife are sacred to them. Somehow or other, these women are still looked on with contempt by them, and do not touch on their feeling for their family. They draw a sort of line that can't be crossed between them and their families. I don't understand it, but it is so. Yes, but he kissed her. Dolly, hush, darling. I saw Stiva when he was in love with you. I remember the time when he came to me and cried, talking of you, and all the poetry and loftiness of his feeling for you. And I know that the longer he has lived with you, the loftier you have been in his eyes. You know we have sometimes laughed at him for putting in at every word, Dolly's a marvelous woman. You have always been a divinity for him, and you are that still, and this has not been an infidelity of the heart. But if it is repeated, it cannot be as I understand it. Yes, but could you forgive it? I don't know. I can't judge. Yes, I can, said Anna, thinking a moment, and grasping the position in her thought and weighing it in her inner balance, she added, Yes, I can. Yes, I could forgive it. I could not be the same, no, but I could forgive it, and forgive it as though it had never been at all. Oh, of course, Dolly interposed quickly, as though saying what she had more than once thought, or else it would not be forgiveness. If one forgives, it must be completely. Come, let us go. I'll take you to your room, she said, getting up, and on the way she embraced Anna. My dear, how glad I am you came. It has made things better, ever so much better. The whole of that day Anna spent at home, that is to say, the Oblonskys, and received no one, though some of her acquaintances had already heard of her arrival and came to call the same day. Anna spent the whole morning with Dolly and the children. She merely sent a brief note to her brother to tell him that he must not fail to dine at home. "Come, God is merciful," she wrote. Oblonsky did dine at home. The conversation was general, and his wife, speaking to him, addressed him as Stiva, as she had not done before. In the relations of the husband and wife the same estrangement still remained, but there was no talk now of separation, and Stepan Arkadyevitch saw the possibility of explanation and reconciliation. Immediately after dinner, Kitty came in. She knew Anna Arkadyevna, but only very slightly, and she came now to her sisters with some trepidation at the prospect of meeting this fashionable Petersburg lady whom everyone spoke so highly of. But she made a favorable impression on Anna Arkadyevna. She saw that at once. Anna was unmistakably admiring her loveliness and her youth, and before Kitty knew where she was, she found herself under Anna's sway. Anna was not like a fashionable lady, nor the mother of a boy of 8 years old. In the elasticity of her movements, the freshness and unflagging eagerness which persisted in her face and broke out in her smile and her glance, she would rather have passed for a girl of 20, had it not been for a serious and at times mournful look in her eyes, which struck and attracted Kitty. Kitty felt that Anna was perfectly simple and was concealing nothing, but that she had another higher world of interest inaccessible to her, complex and poetic. After dinner, when Dolly went away to her own room, Anna rose quickly and went up to her brother, who was just lighting a cigar. "Stiva," she said to him, winking gaily, crossing him and glancing towards the door. "Go, and God help you." He threw down the cigar, understanding her, and departed through the doorway. When Stepan Arkadyevitch had disappeared, she went back to the sofa where she had been sitting, surrounded by the children. Either because the children saw that their mother was fond of this aunt, or that they felt a special charm in her themselves, the 2 elder ones, and the younger following their lead, as children often do, had clung about their new aunt since before dinner, and would not leave her side. And it became a sort of game among them to sit as close as possible to their aunt, to touch her, hold her little hand, kiss it, play with her ring, or even touch the flounce of her skirt. "Come, come, as we were sitting before," said Anna Arkadyevna, sitting down in her place. And again Grisha poked his little face under her arm and nestled with his head on her gown, beaming with pride and happiness. "And when is your next ball?" she asked Kitty. "Next week, and a splendid ball. One of those balls where one always enjoys oneself." "Why, are there balls where one always enjoys oneself?" Anna asked with tender irony. "It's strange, but there are. At the Bobrishtovs, one always enjoys oneself. At the Nikitins, too. Well, at the Meshkovs, it's always dull. Haven't you noticed it?" "No, my dear. For me there are no balls now where one enjoys oneself," said Anna, and Kitty detected in her eyes that mysterious world which was not open to her. "For me there are just some less dull and tiresome." "How can you be dull at a ball?" "Why should not I be dull at a ball?" inquired Anna. Kitty perceived that Anna knew what answer would follow. "Because you always look nicer than anyone." Anna had the ability of blushing. She blushed a little and said, "In the first place, it's never so, and secondly, if it were, what difference would it make to me?" Are you coming to this ball? Asked Kitty. I imagine it won't be possible to avoid going. Here, take it, she said to Tanya, who was pulling the loosely fitted ring off her white, slender-tipped finger. I should be so glad if you go. I should so like to see you at a ball. Anyway, if I do go, I shall comfort myself with the thought that it's a pleasure to you. Grisha, don't pull my hair. It's untidy enough without that, she said, putting up a straying lock which Grisha had been playing with. I imagine you at the ball in lilac. And why in lilac, precisely? Asked Anna, smiling. Now, children, run along, do you hear? Miss Hoole is calling you to tea, she said, tearing the children from her and sending them off to the dining room. I know why you press me to come to the ball. You expect a great deal of this ball, and you want everyone to be there to take part in it. How do you know? Yes. Oh, what a happy time you are at, pursued Anna. I remember, and I know that blue haze like the mist on the mountains in Switzerland, that mist which covers everything in that blissful time when childhood is just ending, and out of that vast circle, happy and gay, there is a path growing narrower and narrower, and it is delightful and alarming to enter the ballroom, bright and splendid as it is. Who has not been through it? Kitty smiled without speaking. But how did she go through it? How I should like to know all her love story, thought Kitty, recalling the unromantic appearance of Alexey Alexandrovitch, her husband. I know something. Stiva told me, and I congratulate you. I liked him so much, Anna continued. I met Vronsky at the railway station. Oh, was he there? Asked Kitty, blushing. What was it Stiva told you? Stiva gossiped about it all, and I should be so glad. I traveled yesterday with Vronsky's mother, and the mother talked without a pause of him. He's her favorite. I know mothers are partial, but... What did his mother tell you? Oh, a great deal, and I know that he's her favorite. Still, one can see how chivalrous he is. Well, for instance, she told me that he had wanted to give up all his property to his brother, that he had done something extraordinary when he was quite a child, saved a woman out of the water. He's a hero, in fact, said Anna, smiling and recollecting the 200 rubles he had given at the station. But she did not tell Kitty about the 200 rubles. For some reason, it was disagreeable for her to think of it. She felt there was something that had to do with her in it, something that ought not to have been. She pressed me very much to go and see her, Anna went on, and I should be glad to go to see her tomorrow. Stiva is staying a long while in Dolly's room, thank God, Anna added, changing the subject and getting up. Kitty fancied, displeased with something. No, I'm first. No, I, screamed the children, who had finished tea and were running up to their Aunt Anna. All together, said Anna, and she ran laughing to meet them, and embraced and swung round all the throng of swarming children, shrieking with delight. Dolly came out of her room to the tea of the adults. Stepan Arkadyevitch did not come out. He must have left his wife's room by the other door. I am afraid you will be cold upstairs, observed Dolly, addressing Anna. I want to move you downstairs, and we shall be nearer. Oh, please, don't trouble about me, answered Anna, looking intently into Dolly's face, trying to make out whether there had been a reconciliation or not. It will be lighter for you here, answered her sister-in-law. I assure you that I sleep everywhere and always like a marmot. What's the question? Inquired Stepan Arkadyevitch, coming out of his room and addressing his wife. From his tone, both Kitty and Anna knew that a reconciliation had taken place. I want to move Anna downstairs, but we must hang up blinds. No one knows how to do it. I must see to it myself, answered Dolly, addressing him. God knows whether they are fully reconciled, thought Anna, hearing her tone, cold and composed. Oh, nonsense, Dolly, always making difficulties, answered her husband. Come, I'll do it if you like. Yes, they must be reconciled, thought Anna. I know how you do everything, answered Dolly. You tell Matvey to do what can't be done, and go away yourself, leaving him to make a muddle of everything. And her habitual mocking smile curved the corner of Dolly's lips as she spoke. Full reconciliation, thought Anna. Thank God. And rejoicing that she was the cause of it, she went up to Dolly and kissed her. Not at all. Why do you always look down on me and Matvey? Answered Stepan Arkadyevitch, smiling hardly perceptibly and addressing his wife. The whole evening Dolly was, as always, a little mocking in her tone to her husband, while Stepan Arkadyevitch was happy and cheerful, but not so as to seem as though, having been forgiven, he had forgotten his offense. At 9:30 a particularly joyful and pleasant family conversation over the tea-table at the Oblonskys' was broken up by an apparently simple incident. But this simple incident, for some reason, struck everyone as strange. Talking about common acquaintances in Petersburg, Anna got up quickly. She is in my album, she said. And by the way, I'll show you my Seryoza, she added with a mother's smile of pride. Towards 10 o'clock, when she usually said good night to her son, and often before going to a ball put him to bed herself, she felt depressed at being so far from him, and whatever she was talking about, she kept coming back in thought to her curly-headed Seryoza. She longed to look at his photograph and talk of him. Seizing the first pretext, she got up and with her light, resolute step went for her album. The stairs up to her room came out on the landing of the great warm main staircase. Just as she was leaving the drawing-room, a ring was heard in the hall. "Who can that be?" said Dolly. "It's early for me to be fetched, and for anyone else, it's late," observed Kitty. "It's sure to be someone with papers for me," put in Stepan Arkadyevitch. When Anna was passing the top of the staircase, a servant was running up to announce the visitor, while the visitor himself was standing under a lamp. Anna, glancing down, at once recognized Vronsky. A strange feeling of pleasure, and at the same time dread of something, stirred in her heart. He was standing still, not taking off his coat, pulling something out of his pocket. At the instant when she was just facing the stairs, he raised his eyes, caught sight of her, and into the expression of his face there passed a shade of embarrassment and dismay. With a slight inclination of her head she passed, hearing behind her Stepan Arkadyevitch's loud voice calling him to come up, and the quiet, soft, and composed voice of Vronsky refusing. When Anna returned with the album, he was already gone, and Stepan Arkadyevitch was telling them that he had called to inquire about the dinner they were giving the next day to a celebrity who had just arrived. "And nothing would induce him to come up. What an odd fellow he is," added Stepan Arkadyevitch. Kitty blushed. She thought that she was the only person who knew why he had come, and why he would not come up. "He has been at home," she thought, "and didn't find me, and thought I should be here. But he did not come up because he thought it too late, and Anna's here." All of them looked at each other, saying nothing, and began to look at Anna's album. There was nothing either exceptional or strange in a man's calling at 9:30 on a friend to inquire details of a proposed dinner party and not coming in, but it seemed strange to all of them. Above all, it seemed strange and not right to Anna.